G'day guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, episode 98. Of course, a lot to talk about today. We're going to be covering some pre-season news that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, a big announcement, and we'll be covering our AFL fantasy team, an update from the original teams that we made earlier in the month. But let's not waste any more of your time. Let's roll the intro and get straight into it. And then Rankin from the pocket, don't tell me, Isaac Rankin!
Yeah.
He's just got the license for a brothel.
Well, I think Gather Round's going to be more than just AFL this next season.
Gets at the handle at the back, Nick Dankos to get the pies home! He's done it! So guys, as you can see, my brother has decided to join us this week. So a couple of weeks out of the team, you're back in now. So
small injury.
Small injury. Yeah, it was throat injury, obviously, couldn't talk.
Yeah.
So you're back today, basically because we're doing this early on a Monday morning, the Australia Day holiday. So luckily for you, you were able to join us. I made him have a shower because he looked like he was a bit dishevelled and looked like he was about to die. So I made him look presentable for you guys, so you're welcome for that. But episode 98, not too long till episode 100. Till we raise the bat fully. We do have a bit of an announcement for you guys. We'll make it here first. These will be the last couple of episodes that we post on the Boundary Riders YouTube channel because we are going to start posting on a brand new exclusive Boundary Riders podcast channel. Now, the reason for this is because I think it's just a little bit too cluttered on the main channel with the podcast as well. And I think that we can get a more of an audience on a separate channel. And I think that's where we can post things like different clips from the podcast that aren't exactly cut up 100%, look a little bit more edited, and maybe get more views on the podcast itself. So what I will do is I will link down below the Boundary Riders podcast YouTube channel. So we'll be posting from episode 101. We'll be posting every single episode there. So we will announce that on the channel and all that sort of stuff. But to let you guys know first, the Boundary Riders the Boundary Riders podcast will be moving on YouTube to a new channel. So Spotify, if you're listening on there, you don't have to worry about it. That's not going anywhere. And we'll make announcements everywhere else in case you missed it or you forget about it over the next couple of weeks. Thought we would announce that now just quickly in case you guys wonder in a couple of weeks why there's no podcast on the Boundary Riders YouTube channel, especially with content throughout the year with the AFL season, like the tips, the video essays. We're planning to get them out every couple of weeks. The review, the trade videos, we're going to be trying to drop a lot more as well. So it's just going to be a lot more cluttered I think it'll be a bit cluttered with the podcast as well. So we're going to leave that over there. Maybe, I think what we're going to do as well as with the AFL fantasy stuff, I want to cover that a little bit more in the podcast every week. So I think what we'll do is we'll maybe cut up a clip every single week of the AFL fantasy stuff and leave that just on the podcast channel, because last year we kind of neglected it, only talked about it for a couple of minutes every episode, but I do want to cover it a bit more. We've kind of been covering AFL fantasy stuff throughout the off season. We did that last year and then we kind of just left it behind and talked about it for 3 or 4 minutes. But with the AFL fantasy channel as well, you can see the code in the bottom corner. I can't remember which one it is, just one of them. Just that's the channel that you can join. We've already got, I think, 35 people joined into the AFL Fantasy League, so that's super exciting. We may do a closed league as well, where like just 18 of us go head to head, but at this stage, I mean, there's 35 of yous and we're not even close to the starters. We're about a month or so before the real stuff begins.
And we still haven't announced a reward yet for it, so...
Yeah, because obviously that's what you're all here for, the reward.
Yeah.
I think, the guy last year won a $250 gift voucher. 120, yeah. You want a gift voucher to the AFL store. So let's get into a bit of AFL news for the pre-season. So we've been doing this the last couple of weeks, and it seems like you guys are really interested in it. So we've been trying to look around. One guy that you guys need to follow, if you're not following him already, he's on Facebook. I'm pretty sure he's on Twitter as well. Nerds for Life. A super coach as well. I don't know if he has that in his name, but Nerds for Life. He talks about AFL pre-season information, training notes, all this kind of stuff, injuries, match sims. He's the guy who's got all the information, basically compiles it into one simple space, and I've been watching his stuff over the preseason, and he's really been able to narrow down what you guys need to be watching. So a lot of my information has been coming from him. I know you've been following him. Probably not too much post on like just the AFL official stuff or from notable journalists, I would say. Like, they're not really posting on that sort of stuff. I guess it's not really newsworthy to talk about a match simulation every now and then. But yeah, this guy keeps us up to date with a lot of information. So first of all, we're going to be talking about the pre-season injuries and a lot of bad information, so to speak. First of all, on Kitty Coleman, it doesn't seem like there's any more new information regarding an injury, but it does seem that he will be missing the opening round and round 1 due to injury setbacks. So not the greatest news if you do have him in AFL Fantasy or Supercoach. Probably just keep aware of him at this stage. But Kitty Coleman, yeah, I mean, I've already taken him out of my team after one little information. Even though, I mean, it's not even.
That's pretty much what you do pre-season. You see one bad information, you're like, yep, he's out, and you
bring him back in, bring someone else in.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to play now. I'm bringing him back in. But yeah, so Kitty Coleman looks like he'll be fine for most of the season. So if you're looking at him for AFL Fantasy wise, early parts of the season, he probably will return by around 3 or 4, I would say.
Yeah.
But just keep your eye out on him. Not too many concerns, I don't think. It's not like a major setback, but he's probably going to miss opening round and round 1 at this stage. For Port Adelaide, Willem Drew has undergone minor foot surgery, a procedure. Seems like he's going to be missing at least 3 weeks to a month of footy with a plantar fascia. So unknown if he'll be ready for, probably miss maybe one of the match sims at this stage. Probably just keep your eye on him. I'm sure he'll be fine as season begins. They start round 1, Port Adelaide, so I'm sure he'll be okay. But a little bit unfortunate news there for Willem Drew. On St Kilda, Paddy Dow is facing a delayed start to 2025 after spending close to 3 weeks in hospital over Christmas with a traumatic infection that required 3 bouts of knee surgery.
Do you think it's a bit weird how we didn't hear about this until this week, and he was in hospital for 3 weeks over Christmas?
Well, I mean, I feel like Mitch Cleary, Tom Morris really have been dropping the ball here. They should have been focusing on that a lot more.
Tom Morris is more interested in the cricket at the moment.
Yeah.
But I just think it's probably because Paddy Dow's not a superstar of our competition.
Yeah, true. He's been sitting in hospital for 3 weeks. You'd think someone would have noticed.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it is good to see that he's at least recovering now. So didn't really get much of a go through a lot of the first half of the season for the Saints in his first year from Carlton, but did return later in the season, had some decent games for the Saints, so hopefully he can have a better 2025. Anthony Scott for the Western Bulldogs has had a pre-season derailment after suffering a kneecap subluxation at training. I think that's when it gets dislocated, isn't it? I mean, why am I asking you?
I'm not
sorry.
a doctor.
You're not an expert. He will be out for 5 weeks. So that's pretty disappointing for Anthony Scott. Major injury blow for Eagles star Elliot Yeo. Landed awkwardly in a tackle during a match simulation and is set for further scans on his knees. That's really bad news there for Elliot Yeo. Has always had injury problems basically since the 2018 Grand Final. Had a very bad couple of years. Had a lot of footy last year. Finally seemed like he was back on track, and now another injury setback for Elliot Yeo. Really unfortunate for him. Logan McDonald is said to be no certainty to suit up for the Swans in opening round against Hawthorn, as he's still suffering issues with his ankle injury that he suffered at the end of 2024's season. So, interesting for Logan McDonald. I'm interested to see what his role is going to be this year for the Swans. A little bit unfortunate there for Logan McDonald, but hopefully he can be there when round 0 rolls around. And finally, on Hawthorn's side, injured Hawks duo in Mitch Lewis and James Blank are going to visit Bill Knowles, who is a rehab guru in the US, to help with their ACL injuries through last year. So Mitch Lewis, James Blank, very important players to Hawthorn's lineup. James Blank, a little bit not so much now because of the recruitment of Battle and Barras, but Mitch Lewis has just been so ravaged by injury in his early career.
If he actually got a chance last year, they could have done something, Hawthorn. I reckon they could have went further than what they did.
Yeah, I mean, in that final against Port Adelaide, they missed Sam Frost as well, who was a very big player for them. So hopefully those guys can maybe return in the mid-season. We'll just have to wait and see on that front. Now some good news on the injury front. Nick Dacos has returned to the track on the Friday, showed no signs of his plantar fascia issue that has been limiting him for the last month or so. De Goey will build into the practice match minutes across the next month, with the Magpies heading to the Gold Coast in a few weeks for a training camp match sim against the Suns and the Lions. That's good to see. De Goey obviously missed a lot of last year through injury. Was one of the players really who would I wouldn't say he was like the hangover, but he was like a part of it, not being there for a lot of the season. Such an important player. Dan Rioli for the Gold Coast are hopeful that he'll be available for their practice game and confident he will line up in opening round. Dom Brew, fucking hell. Dom Brew, he's the guy who's the Werribee captain. Obviously, he was a big talking point. He's been training with the Western Bulldogs, hopefully getting a spot on their list. Does seem that he is still in the hunt and is back to full training after having an injury setback before Christmas. That's really good news to see. So a couple of injuries on that front. That's good news for those players. I really love to see Dom Brew join the Bulldogs. Who knows if he gets a game, but even so, he deserves a spot. We obviously saw how good Sean Manor was for the Cats late last year as well. He was one of their best performing players for a lot of that end part of the season. Now looking at some good form, some decent form, some new player roles for players from pre-season. First of all, for Port Adelaide, I wanted to take a look at Josh Sinn. So it currently seems like he's going to be the guy who is taking over the Houston role. So obviously Houston left. People widely thought that Jace Burgoyne would be the guy to take over that role. However, it does seem that he's going to be playing more wing this season, and it looks like Josh Sinn is ready to step into that role. It is a little bit of a wait and see, though, because Kane Farrell is still in the rehab group for Port Adelaide, and obviously he's widely been seen as a halfback, the person to take over that role. However, I think he's probably already had that, and I think that they're looking for a second in command, and I think Josh Sinn at this stage is probably going to be the one to take it.
Well, yeah, you got to still remember that he was a first-round draft pick a couple of years ago, Josh Sinn. So
was he pick 8 for Port Adelaide?
I'm pretty sure he was a top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been ravaged by injury in his early career. So I can see why they've decided maybe to give him a go. Because to be honest, if Jace Burgoyne didn't have that great game in the finals, no one would really be talking about him taking that role. But
yeah, so it looks like Jace Burgoyne's looking a lot more on the wing. So the wing roles for Port Adelaide, I mean, I wouldn't mind him playing there. He's a good user, good runner. The other players probably looking at that role is Miles Bergman as well. But we saw him play at half-back into the defence last year and even played as a tall defender at times. Yeah. So interested to see how they play that. But I think Josh Sinn is the one looking for that half-back role at this stage. On Jack Macrae, very good news. At this stage, it looks like Jack Macrae is going to be an inside mid. He's been playing there all pre-season match simulations, had a lot of CBAs in their match sim, and seems like he's finally found his role at St Kilda. So they've also got a couple of young guys looking to go through there this season, like Mateus Filippo, but I think there's a role there for Jack Macrae, and we've obviously seen his best footy is in the guts.
Yeah, and he'll bring a lot of experience into that Saints midfield.
And some much needed help for Jack Steele.
Yeah.
Another one on the Saints is Marshall hasn't really been training a lot this preseason in the ruck, but Harry Boyd absolutely starred in the match simulation, and he has been picked up by the Saints as an SSP player. Yeah. So a supplement player, Harry Boyd looks like a player to watch, maybe as an early debut for the Saints this year. Keep your eye out on him. On Hawthorn's side, Henry Hustwaite, a player who really showed some good signs in last year's preseason, but never really got to go for the Hawks throughout the campaign. Played a couple of games, wasn't really seen much. Has been absolutely shining again as an inside mid this preseason. One may have thought that he was going to step into his role in 2024. Wasn't to be. Could be 2025 be his year. Has looked good so far. So that's really good to see. Hopefully, for his sake, he can get some games, but there's going to be a lot of Hawthorn players playing for those roles this season. A lot of young guys. On Sydney, first of all, Cal Mills looks like he's a lock for AFL Fantasy Supercoach this season. All reports he's absolutely been starring on the track. Obviously, he was third in their 2KM child trial before Christmas, has been training with the midfielders, and looks like he's playing exclusively mid in the match simulations. Has plenty a little bit of time during the summer as a halfback, but I think Sydney are pretty much ready to go to give him that midfield role. Yeah. I think the only reason why he didn't play that a lot last year was with the injuries and a limited prep time before finals. Basically had to chuck him as a halfback, and that's why he's been so inconsistent, I think.
Yeah.
But now on Sydney on a positional change side, and this is something I am really questioning. I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like this is if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of situation, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Dean Cox looks like to, at this stage, been testing Tom McCartan as a forward with Joel Hamling, who played forward in the VFL last year, playing in defence in the match simulations this year. So Tom McCartan being trialled as a forward. I just think there is no need for this. I mean, you got Joel Amati, you've got Hayden McLean, and Logan McDonald as tall forwards for Sydney. They've been locked there for a while now. Why Tom McCartan's been a very underrated tall defender for at least a few seasons for Sydney. I just think that with Sydney's defence of Rampy, Melican and McCartan, it started to look like they've solidified their spots as tall defenders in the team, and Joel Hamling has been that guy who they don't really know where they're going to go. So I don't know if this is Dean Cox trying to see if Joel Hamling is the guy that Sydney need back there. But for me personally, I think Tom McCartan isn't the issue back there. I think that like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Tom McCartan's role, maybe playing forward next in 2025?
I think it's very hard to see, to look at it, because sometimes it will work. Like, he's went back now, he's been there for a couple of years. Sometimes it helps you develop your forward craft, sometimes. Like, and the thing is that Joel Hamling, they brought him in a couple of seasons ago, and he hasn't got any games. They decided they wanted to chuck him forward. Now they want to chuck him back. It's pretty much it's his audition to see if he can get back on an AFL list every week in the best 22. So if he can't really do it, he's definitely done.
Yeah.
And you got to think also, Rampy's nearly the end of his career.
Yeah, but Joel Hamling's not much old. I think he's actually the same age as Dane Rampy, if not just a little bit younger.
Yeah.
He's still in his 30s. That's why my problem is that Tom McCartan is a young guy. He's in his mid-20s at most. That's why I think that they should just keep him down back. But at the end of the day, and that's my point as well, that Tom McCartan never really proved himself as a forward. I mean, he was recruited as one, but I think he finally found his role in defence. Now, look, I could be completely wrong. Obviously, Dean Cox is the coach. I'm not going to question him as yet. But I just think at this point, at this point, I look at it and I'm a bit uneasy about it. Because I think that, if anything, Sydney need to play less tall forwards up there, let alone more of them.
Yeah.
So that's just my thoughts. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a blessing in disguise. Maybe Tom McCartan will go up there, kick 50 goals this year. Who knows? But I just think it's a little bit of at the moment, I'm on the side of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But we'll wait and see. On the Giants, it does seem Phoenix Gothard's got some good praise from his coach. He said he's been really good across the pre-season so far. So Phoenix Gothard, I don't think played last year, but was drafted in 2023's draft. Obviously was like a big talking point because he was there with his mate, and Connor O'Sullivan, and they both celebrated. He was a bit of a surprise pick for the Giants in the first round. So never really got a go last year, but maybe this year he can get a go as a small forward. The Giants obviously heavily reliant on those small half forward roles, so like Brent Daniels and Toby Bedford at times, but he's been moved on more as a tagging midfielder now. Yeah. So they've been trying to look for a new forward, a small forward. They've had Harvey Thomas, is it? Harvey Thomas, and then a couple of others as well. So and Darcy Jones, that's it. The kid with the lid, that's the only way I know his name. But yeah, keep your eye out on Phoenix Gothard as well. Now, David King's had a little bit of a look at pre-season as well. He said that good numbers on the track for the Blues. Obviously, no Curnow or Walsh. The big question mark is their centre half-back, Silvani, and Ollie Hollands off half-back look good. And an interesting one in Ashton Moyer. Just might be the difference maker in 2025. So, played a couple of games last year, late in the year when Carlton were ravaged by injury. Played as a forward, had some good games, didn't play in their final, but could be a player to watch in 2025. For Hawthorn in their match simulations, Will Day, interesting one, was playing a little bit of a Bontempelli sort of role, playing predominantly midfield, but then went into the forward line and had some good games, good moments up there. He does kind of remind me of a Bontempelli.
You just need to probably build his tank. That's what he's...
Yeah, but I mean, if he can play 70% midfield and then 25% forward with a little bit of bench time, that's always good to see. Not so much for fantasy, but for Hawthorn, that'd be good to see. Backline now is a great mix of size and counter-attacking small, mid-sized players. No Sicily or Josh Battle in their match simulation at this stage. I think Battle is fine. Sicily is a little bit of a question mark at this stage. But Jaff is healthy, eye-catching on the track, as well as Nick Watson everywhere and took that hanger. Did you see that?
Yeah, that was...
Great mark. I mean, imagine taking the mark of the year in January. Not a good look.
No.
You don't get a car anymore, but still, should have timed that a bit better than Nick Watson. And finally, on Collingwood's side, emphasis on short kicking for them. Impossible to not notice the high standard of execution at this stage. Wondering if David King is wondering, though, if Dan Houston is the answer for Nick Dacos off of halfback. Obviously, Nick Dacos moved into the midfield last year. Is Dan Houston the answer to play off halfback? Had a very good preseason for his new club. Obviously, it doesn't make you feel too impressed, but Dan Houston is a pretty good watch so far this preseason for the Pies. So I don't think there's many doubts about his his output when he gets out there.
He's always been an elite kick and
consistent player.
Yeah.
Always been consistent for Port Adelaide. So Collingwood would love having him. Sorry. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about a bit of AFL fantasy. So I thought both of us coming to February now would take a look at our teams. So I'll go through my team first and we'll go through yours. I made a few changes since we last looked at it early in the January part of the year. So I've pretty similar, but there are a few changes. So first of all, in my defence, I've got Harry Sheasel, Max Holmes, Colby McKercher, Cal Mills, Travalia, and Bo Allen. In the midfield, I've got Zach Merritt, Jack Steele, Connor Rosie, Will Ashcroft, Isaac Cumming, Sid Draper, Levi Ashcroft and Josh Smiley. In the ruck, I've got Tim English and Tom de Koning. In the forward line, I've got Jason Horne-Francis, Jack McRae, Matthias Filippo, Bailey Smith, Caleb Daniel, and Elijah Hewitt. On the bench, I've got El Harley and Smith. In the midfield is Jagger Smith and Leo Lombard. In the ruck, I've got Archer Reed. Forward line, I've got Daniel Curtin and Caden Cleary. And onto the utility, I have got Max Hall for the Saints. So a couple of changes, but overall, it's a pretty similar team. What have you been looking at on your team this year?
So, defence, I've got Lockie Whitfield, Max Holmes, Trent Rivers, Colby McKercher. I've got Kadeem Coleman at the moment, but that probably will change. And Bo Allen. Midfield is Zach Merritt, Rosie, Will Ashcroft, Clayton Oliver, Pete Ling, Draper, Nathan O'Driscoll, and Josh Smiley. Ruck is Darcy Cameron and Tom de Koning. And my forward line is Jason Horne-Francis, Isaac Rankin, Filippo, Bailey Smith, Caleb Daniel, and Elijah Hewitt. On the bench is El Harley and Gipkiss. Midfield is DiMatteo and Barrett. Ruck is Tom Campbell. Ethan Reid and Caden Cleary are in my forward line, and I've got Matt Whitlock as my utility at the moment.
So, a very similar team. I know my brother really likes to. I think he logs on my phone at night and just has a look at my team, just quickly, oh, that's the guy I need to get. Yeah.
This is the person who I've beaten in the last 2 seasons.
I know, it's very embarrassing because you copy my team and then you make the better trades. Unfortunately, that's definitely how it works. Yeah. Anyway, so I've got a couple of differences. You've gone with a very expensive defense. I think 5 players over 500k. Is that about right?
Yes, because Kadeem Coleman, yes.
Kadeem Coleman. You may change that one, though. So one of the big ones that I've made, obviously, is Coleman out. I've also made the change of Rankin out of the team. Now, that's a wait and see. But with that news about Jack McRae having a lot more CBAs in the match simulations, I'm knocking on wood that he's going to be playing a lot more midfield this year for St Kilda. And we've seen the output of Jack McRae when he plays midfield.
He can average 110 every week.
Yeah. Now, I mean, he's a little bit older now, but I don't think that's a real indicator that he's going to score low. I think that's sort of fine. I think he'll be okay. So that's why I've got Jack McRae in the team. I did have for a little bit Nathan O'Driscoll in the team. I did swap that for, it was Leo Lombard at this stage. So give me a little bit more cash. I've been fiddling around with maybe Connor Rosie. I think I'm going to keep him there for now. Cal Mills was out of my team for a while. I had Colby McKercher in. But then when Coleman was announced that he's probably not going to be playing in opening round or the first 3 rounds of the season, I've upgraded to Cal Mills, which is a big reason why I got rid of Isaac Rankin. Now on my bench, which is quite interesting. Now, Smith for the Richmond Tigers in defence. There's a lot of talk about this guy. He's a basement price. There's a lot of talk about him in the preseason. He's really been showing some good signs, maybe taking over the Dan Rioli role. So I think he's a bit of a watch for me. It's a little bit of a wait, and obviously it's a wait and see on the reserves. If they get selected in round one or opening round, you pick them. If they don't, then obviously you kick them out. But there's been a lot of good talk about him, so that's why I've got Smith in the defence. On the ruck in Archer Reid. So Campbell has been there for me early on. I took him out. I've thinking about Hugh Boyd for St Kilda, who's been drafted, who's been picked up there as an SSP player. But Archer Reid, we talked about him. I talked about him last week as a real good performer for the preseason for West Coast. And with Matt Flynn being injured again, I don't know if it's going to keep him out of round one. But if it does, Archer Reid, basement price $230. I think he's a watch for me. He is also a ruck forward, so that does give a little bit of flexibility as a position player. Forwards haven't changed. Curtin and Cleary have stayed there basically the whole time. But my utility is Max Hall, one who's been performing quite well for St Kilda in the pre-season. He's a little bit of a forward mid, plays as a small forward for St Kilda in the pre-season as well. I think there's obviously a role there for a debutant. I think that's sort of a role that players can get an early debut. So I think Max Hall is there as an option for St Kilda. But really, not a lot of changes in my team. There's Isaac Cumming. I don't think I had him in the team originally. I think that was where I had Clayton Oliver, which again could be changed. I may pick Clayton Oliver up. There's been some decent talk about him in the preseason. We'll have to wait and see. I want to see his match simulation live, and I want to see the preseason game before I absolutely start trying to get him into the team. But if he is there, obviously Clayton Oliver is a almost must pick, I think, because he is such great on output. But at this stage, that's my team. I've got 18k left in the bank, so not too bad. But what about you? There's a couple of changes that you've made, a couple of team adjustments. First of all, you picked up Colby you had Trent Rivers over McKercher.
Yeah.
I've been talking a bit about Trent Rivers because I think that there's a midfield role for him, especially with the information of Petrarca re-injuring his ribs. So, what are the reasons for some of the players you've picked? Because there's a couple there that are different.
So people like James Peatling, people are picking either him or Isaac Cumming. I just think that the role of him probably going in the midfield is more appealing to me than what Isaac Cumming is. I think he could play off halfback. Isaac Cumming, he could play off a bit of the wing. It's a bit of an unknown for him. So I thought I've seen more of an output from James Peatling. I think that's more of a go for me. But like you said, I'll have to watch match sims and all that to really see which one's more lighting it up.
The thing is as well with James Peatling is last year he played quite a lot as the sub, and when he wasn't sub, he scored quite a few. I think he scored 2 or 3 100 plus games.
Late in the season he played really well.
Yeah, for the Giants. So and also played a bit of a role as a tagger. So maybe as a defensive forward at times. So maybe just getting his tank up, and then eventually at the Crows there is spots there for midfield minutes. So James Peatling could definitely knock them down.
And I've got Tom Campbell at the moment, that's 316. I'll definitely probably get rid of him for Harry Boyd or Archer Reid. Yeah, Archer Reid, because they'll give me a lot more cash. I've got I've got a few other players that are not base price on my bench. Yeah. So I've only got 6k left. Yeah. But with players like Kadeen Coleman maybe not playing week 1.
I have heard some news as well, just quickly, that Travalia has been playing off the wing in match sim for St Kilda.
And we've seen Reece in last couple of seasons that St Kilda like to play some of their new players in the first couple rounds. Yeah. So that probably is a bit more appealing. Yeah. That I'll probably look for a player like a rookie that plays round 1 in the defence and stuff like that. So. But I think the last few seasons you've had to look at players that are defence, load up on defence, because kick-outs and all that are extra 3 points, and obviously the last couple of seasons since they changed that rule.
You basically just have to jump out the square and then you're fine.
That's why I've picked players like Whitfield, because I've avoided that for the last couple of years, and it's bit me bit me late in the year because the teams I've played in finals have had him and I haven't.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you've got a pretty expensive defense. Like, there's only 5 players over the pace of 500, which is pretty high. Like, you'd think. Yeah. I mean, you don't really have that in many positions. Like, even forward line you do as well. But, I mean, when defence in previous years, you probably wouldn't, like, top load on that. But defence is, like almost the most important position now, I feel like. Because when you get, like you say, a lot of teams, like, attack from their defence, play off halfback, and then you got the kick-ins as well. Yeah. And, yeah, I think that's where it's going to be the most. I think if that's a tip I'm going to give away to anyone is, you know, don't be afraid to top load on your defence. If you've got players back there that you think are going to play well, don't be afraid to go, oh, you know, I've got 500k, I've got enough money to get a player at 600k, but I probably should use that in another position. I would say go for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good idea because I think the forward line this year is something you could probably go a bit cheaper on, to be honest. Like, there's a couple of options back there that I've kind of liked. Talked about last week, the likes of Neil Erasmus for Fremantle. He's having a really good preseason. He is a forward mid for Freo. Played a lot of sub games last year and only averaged about 25. But is priced around 400. So if you want to go a little bit lower from one player to another, you know, Caleb Daniel's a must, I think. Yeah. But if you have Caleb Daniel as like your fourth forward, I don't think that's a big deal, to be honest. So maybe just keep an eye out on that, guys. Make sure to let us know down below if our AFL fantasy teams going into February, how your teams are going. If you have any tips for us, if you agree with the tips that we've given you, make sure to let us know down below. And make sure to join the AFL Fantasy League as well. Obviously, you can see the code in the bottom corner. It is linked down below. We have about 35 of you guys in the league already, just into early February when this video is posted. So that's absolutely crazy. And we may, if we get enough support on that open league, because it's an open league, everyone can join. It's basically the way you win it is getting the most amount of points. We may make a head-to-head league as well, because I think that's always a lot of fun to play against other people. So we may do that as well. We'll probably do that towards the closer parts of the year, so everyone can get in as quick as possible, because I think that's how it will work. But yeah, make sure to let us know down below, guys, how your AFL fantasy team is going. But I think that's pretty much all we've got for this episode of the AFL Fantasy Podcast. Fuck me. The Boundary Riders Podcast. Like we said at the start of the episode, the Boundary Riders Podcast on YouTube will be moving to a brand new exclusive channel. So we will link that down below. Make sure to go subscribe to that now. It's our old Twinners podcast channel, so that's why it's got subscribers. But I've basically cleared all of that. So if you want to go, make sure to go subscribe over there. I was going to say follow, but make sure to go subscribe over there. From episode 101, we'll be posting all the podcasts over there, and we'll be posting a lot of our AFL fantasy recaps over the season as a clip over there. So make sure to go check that out. If you did enjoy this episode of the Boundary Riders Podcast, of course, make sure to like and subscribe. We've really been appreciating the support on this podcast over the last couple of weeks. We've been getting a lot of views, and people seem to really like the preseason recaps. So make sure to keep an eye on that. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you're over on Spotify, nothing changes for you. The podcast will be posted every single week on there. So make sure to chuck us a follow and leave us 5 stars so you are notified on the podcast every single week. And I just realized I probably should have mentioned this at the start of the episode, but if you want to become a channel member, you can watch this podcast live every single week. We are currently live 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. So if you want to watch that, our podcast live and get a bunch of other exclusive perks, the link for channel membership is down below. But again, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next week.
See you later, guys.